Welcome, Suze. It's so nice to see you, and you're looking so amazingly well. It's like spring in my Zoom screen.
Thank you.
um, so thank you for agreeing to come and do this with me today. And as with all my guests, I want to ask you to begin by describing briefly the event that you want to talk about that you feel was a major turning point in your life.
Yeah, so I've had many turning points, as you know, and I think that there's one major turning point that after that, all the turning points keep referring back to, and that is when I was 23, 24, something like that. I graduated from a university, and I moved to live on my own. I moved to Rotterdam. And what I didn't really realize is that the years before that were not very carefree. My boyfriend got hit by a car and he had brain damage. So I was taking care of him for 2 years during my studies. And by the time I started revisiting my university, all my friends had left and graduated already. So I was there on my own. And those 2 years were not about me, they were all about him. And then I lost connection with who I was and what I wanted. And there are many instances in childhood that also got me lost in who I was and what I wanted. So then when I got back into my university, I decided, okay, let's do this. Let's graduate. Let's just start a whole new life. So that's what I did. I pushed myself to graduate in a year instead of 2.5 years. And I moved to Rotterdam and I thought, I'm just burning all my bridges. I'm starting over. And then when I came in Rotterdam, I lived in a very dangerous area where everybody has a gun and you can't travel there after 8 p.m. as a woman on your own. My those flats all have one front door and the other people in the building were actually criminals. So it was a very unsafe area. And the good thing about that actually was that it made me realize that it really reflected back to me how miserable I was inside. I didn't purposefully choose that area. It just I turned out there, and there was a beautiful market and all these different cultures out there. So I thought, oh, that's amazing, all this food, and I never realized that it wasn't very nice to live there. And then I was all by myself. I didn't know anybody in the entire city. I didn't have any friends. So there I was starting a new life. And that's where I realized that I didn't really want to start a new life. So I was there and it just drained all the life out of me. And I didn't know where to begin. I burnt all my bridges. I didn't even send my friends a notice of my move. And I was trying to hold on to nothing, actually. I couldn't find a clue in life where I wanted to hold on to. So I was there trying to be happy for the people around me, thinking if this is life at 23 or 24, then let's just stop. Let's stop right here. So I think I walked around that city for 2 years feeling that death would really be a very good solution. I wasn't cutting myself, but I wasn't paying attention in traffic. And at a certain point, I actually jumped in front of cars. And there's a funny thing, actually, that if you want to commit suicide, it's actually not that easy because people don't want to kill you. So even in a dangerous area, it's not that easy to be hit by a car. Somehow they all stop. It's funny in hindsight, right?
Isn't it? Yeah.
But and then at a certain point, I thought, okay, I don't know if I want to live. I don't want the life I have now. I don't know how to get out of this. So I just don't care. And I stopped caring and I started neglecting all my friends, neglecting everybody around me. And I was in a really dark place. Yeah. So basically that's where I was. And then I had a friend and he came over to look out for me, and he said, he was actually the first one, because most friends, when you're suicidal, when you're in a dark place, most people try to save you. And they
Mm.
try to get you back to life, right? And they try to talk you out of it. So I didn't talk with anybody. Many people of that time don't know anything about this. And if they do, then they try to somehow prove to me that life was valuable. And I said to them, and I told them how I was really feeling, but they just didn't want to listen. And then this one friend, he said to me, "Wow, that sounds heavy. Tell me." And I said, "Do you really want to know what it was like? What I feel like, what it's like inside me?" He said, "Well, I don't have a clue what it's like, but tell me." And he was really curious and he really wanted to know. And then at the end of that conversation, he said, "Wow, I really get that you want to kill yourself." And I said, "Yes, well, it's just sometimes I wonder why I haven't yet." And then at the end of the evening, he said, "I actually had a really good time. I would like to see you next week, but I'm not certain if you'll be there." And I said, "Well, I can wait a week." He said, "Okay, if you promise me that you can wait a week, I will be here next week." And and that is actually how I pulled myself out of that, because what I realized then is, okay, this week I won't kill myself. So then let's see if I can find a few things that might be a little bit better than just not doing anything. And I just started living week by week. Yeah. Basically, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, that friend of yours, what an amazing thing to have done to kind of make you feel heard for the very first time, and to give you kind of almost that non-interventionist approach,
Exactly.
and like, sort of tantalizingly saying, well, if you're going to stay another week, I'll be back. I mean, do you really want to see me? In which case, hang in there for another week. I
Exactly.
love that. That's so powerful. And I think in this time there's lots of young people who probably feel that way, don't they? Especially with the pandemic. So that's really good advice. So I have a couple of questions on, what it was. Obviously, I don't want to necessarily ask you to explain why exactly you were feeling that way, but I have a couple of questions in terms of, it feels to me like you were running away from something. So you came to this place where you didn't know anyone. On the face of it, it looked like a really interesting place to be, but part of you maybe knew that it was going to be a little bit isolating and very different. So what was it that made you feel that you couldn't be around family or people you already knew?
Well, this is something I only know now. So we're now 20 years later, right?
Mm.
And I think about 10 years ago, it started to dawn on me what was really going on there. I didn't have any conscious awareness of this at the time. But when I look back, um, for the first 7 years of my life, my parents were always fighting. And probably they weren't always fighting, but that's what I remember, right? They were really in a bad situation. We lived in the United States. Um, my mother never wanted to move to there. My father didn't want to go back. And they were in huge fights. And so for the first years, the crucial years where you really create a relationship with life, what I created in hindsight was a relationship that everybody's better off without me.
Oh.
Now, this is not what my parents meant, of course, because they were not fighting because of me. They were fighting. And if anything, I was a reason for them not to separate and to work it out, right? But I thought people were always fighting because of me. So all this stress that my dad had about work and relationships, and my parents have a very complicated marriage. And they're cousins and they've been together their entire life. My mom is well, her parents had severe war traumas. And so basically none of this is their fault either. It's just the way it was. And my conclusion was, I better get out of the way. Now, as a child, I did that by just trying to be happy, trying to make everybody happy, and trying to ignore my own desires and what I wanted. Because I learned that life is not about what I want. Life is about what the people around me expect.
Mm.
And my dad could ignore me or be really angry. And he was also very sweet as well. But I had this idea that I triggered the anger and I triggered the neglect. I had nothing to do with it. But as a child, we create those beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So then I think in school, this was also, I was in a school where I was very out of place, really rich kids. And my dad had a great job, but we were not really rich by those standards. So I felt out of place there as well. And then I felt out of place in my sailing school where I learned sailing. And my dad was always looking like, I don't want to be here. Now, I thought, you see, everything I want, he doesn't want. If I want something, he gets angry. Now, looking back at that, I think actually he was going out of his comfort zone and out of his way to actually facilitate me in doing what I wanted, because it was really paying a toll on his life being in between those rich people. But I didn't know that. I just thought he hated everything I do. And every single time I want something, my mom would criticize me and my dad would start to ignore me, telling me that I wasn't good enough. So then I learned a strategy, and that is running away and doing it secretly on my own terms. So then when in my university, all of a sudden stuff got hard and I didn't know how to fix it, I ran away and I did it over on my own terms. Now, when I ask my parents for help, they try to take over my life, and then it's still not my life. So I wanted to figure out in Rotterdam what I wanted to do and what would be good for me. And I didn't want anybody to take over. And I somehow just wanted to start with a clean slate with nobody in the picture, because that felt like more comfortable. I did that already when I left home and I started university. I also just burnt my bridges to my family, said, I'm living there, I'm leaving, I don't want anything to do with you guys. That was very lonely. But here again, it was very lonely. And now I was also in a dangerous place. So my idea of let's just start over and do everything on my own, this time really backfired harsh on me. But I never understood that there was actually a support team there for me, because my parents didn't really feel like support. I know they are supportive. They didn't feel like supportive. They felt blaming me that if I didn't do it their way, I would be stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened then? So this friend of yours who came along and made you feel heard and understood. So was he the person who then almost saved you without trying to save you?
Yes, he literally saved my life, and then I married him, which is a really bad idea for both of us. So 2 years later, we divorced as best friends. By the way,
I
I
see.
must add that we haven't spoken for 10 years, but we really separated as best friends. Um, but I thought, so this is to build on that story, right? I thought that if I was in the picture, I would ruin everything for everyone. That was kind of like, if I am there, I ruin things. That was the childhood belief that I took away. It wasn't the takeaway I should have taken, but it was the takeaway I came out of childhood with. So then this guy wouldn't leave even though I ruined everything. And I thought, well, if somebody just refuses to leave even though I ruin everything, I have to marry him. So but then I started to really go in therapy, learn things about my own life, and I started to feel better, and life started to somehow heal. And we bought a house in a smaller city in a beautiful area, and I started rowing, and I started my own company, and And I was rediscovering who I was and what I wanted. Um, and started to be happy again, build new friendships. But he kind of had this picture of, yeah, but we're together now. So why are you discovering yourself now? We are together now. So then all my discoveries around who I was backfired into now I had to make him happy. So eventually we divorced again. But it was a really, really beautiful period where I learned that I can take care of myself despite hurting somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's okay to actually live the life I want to live. And I think that was also the basis where I started my own company and where I really started to do the things that I wanted to do. And at that point, actually, I didn't start my company because I was so confident. I started my company because I really didn't know how to connect with my boss in my in my job, and I just really didn't understand anything. And I thought, okay, so from that pattern of, okay, if people don't understand me, let's get out of there and do it all by myself, which I did in Rotterdam. I also started my own company. It wasn't from a courageous place. It was really from the place of, I can do it on my own. I don't know how to do it together. So that's how I started. But then eventually a business really requires you to heal all those things. Otherwise you'll fall flat on your face anyway.
Yeah, you can't run a business all on your own for too long.
You
So
need
that's,
clients.
yeah, you need clients as well, exactly. And I think for me, what's interesting is that, you're this kind of this almost innate desire to not be controlled by other people, to not be made to feel like you had to please them, or that the only way you would get validation was if you were doing things that made them happy, was really clashing with your desire to be self-reliant and self-sufficient. And how did you sort of navigate that? So what happened after that? So you split up with, your husband,
Yes.
and you'd found yourself and you started your own business. So what happened after that?
Well, I lived on my own for a few years, and I just really said, okay, I am not compromising anymore. I'm just doing what I want to do. I'm only doing the business assignments that I really want to do, and I'm only going to have fun. So the place where I had most fun at that time was out at sea. So I went sailing 3-4 months a year, and I just had fun and I played and I just did what I wanted to do. Now, still wasn't very good at connecting with people. So I did everything on my own terms, but I didn't know how to incorporate the other person. So, for instance, I rowed in the rowing club, and then I thought, okay, I want to row with a group of people, but I want to do it in the way that's good for me. And if not, I'll leave the group. So I wasn't very good at collaborating or discussing how to do this together. I was like, okay, if you don't want what I want, that's fine. You go ahead with your thing. I'll do my own thing. And I started rowing on my own in my own boat. But actually that was okay because I really rediscovered the things I like and what I want to do. And I discovered my talents in my business and things that I am good at. And that was actually really nice. And I created a really strong group of friends from the rowing club who didn't judge me for that I wanted to do it my own way. And that was actually a very nice time until I got pregnant. I
Gosh. So how old were you at this point?
was 30 at this point.
Okay. So you got pregnant,
Yes.
and then what happened?
Well, I got pregnant very unexpectedly because I thought I was infertile. So after my marriage and another relationship that I really loved that person, I thought, okay, I don't know. Let's just see. Let's let everything go. And I'm not the one night stand kind of person, but I thought, you know what? I don't know where life will bring me. Let's just really let go and have some fun. And then I got pregnant by somebody who I barely knew, which is not ideal, especially since he was 6 years younger than me and left when I was 8 weeks pregnant.
Oh,
So then I was a single mom running my own business. And I didn't really know if he was going to come back or not. Well, over the past 16 years to this day, I haven't heard anything from him. So he's probably never coming coming back. Um, but that really changed a lot because the life I had before that, even when we were divorced and I was building my own business, I actually always had this mantra of, you know what, I can always kill myself. So that I didn't live week by week anymore at a certain point. But I had this freedom of, hey, you know what? I don't have to be here. I don't have to be on this planet. I don't have to fix anything. If I want to leave, I just jump in the ocean and I'm gone. And that was actually a very freeing thought. The idea that I could end it the minute it got too painful actually kept me alive. And then I got pregnant with my son, and it started to dawn on me that that wasn't an option anymore. So then all of a sudden, I realized, okay, if I don't fix this, it's either him and me together in some dark place, which is not what I'm going to do, or I have to fix it. But killing myself and leaving a baby on this planet was not my idea of how to fix it. So that was basically the instant in my life where I wasn't forced by anybody else, but life forced me to actually really look at what was causing these dark places, and really forced me to look at how to really fix it from a place of not just running out to the ocean every time I felt overwhelmed and go sailing, but really fix it here in life.
Something you said just kind of just hit me. You said that you had this option that you could kill yourself anytime you want, and that almost kept you alive. That's such a powerful thing. And most people go through life really fearing death. They really fear. They don't know what it's going to mean and where they're going to go after they die. How did you get so comfortable with the notion of death? What did you feel was going to happen to you when you died?
Well, I when I was 13, my favorite person in the whole world died, my grandfather. And I think I had funerals every year ever since.
Yeah.
Of my five best friends, three died already. So um, I don't know what death will bring, but it has to be something peaceful and something connected with them again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So having your son, carrying your son clearly was a game changer for you.
Yes.
The way you thought about, the purpose in your life, I guess, because suddenly you had somebody who relied on you, that needed you to be well and healthy. So tell me about your journey to discovering, rediscovering again who you were and finding purpose.
Now the first years were kind of messy because I had to figure out all these things, and I ran my own business. And what I didn't really realize until I got pregnant was it felt like I had complete freedom, and it felt like I wasn't working at all. But in reality, I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for a few weeks in a row. And then I would go out to sea for a few weeks in a row. And that's still actually how I function best. I function best in a big burst and then nothing. And that feels like doing nothing. But if you want your baby only 3 days in daycare, that doesn't work. So I had to figure out things that I didn't know how to figure out. So in reality, when he was 8 weeks, I was back to working 40-hour weeks, which I never intended to do, but I didn't know how to do it otherwise. So the first years, I was just trying to be a breadwinner, trying to do everything right, failing at everything, blaming myself, saying, hey, you can't even be a good mom to your kid. But what I always knew is this is not the way life is supposed to be. I don't care how many examples I see of moms doing this or finding some guy providing for them and staying at home. I don't care how many examples of that I see. It's not what we're supposed to be doing. So I thought, there has to be an answer to this. And I was determined to find that answer. So the first thing that I started doing was thinking, okay, let's start with only doing work that I really want to do. It might be too many hours, it might require too much for me, but if I don't like what I'm doing, then that's too big of a compromise. So that's what I started out with. I actually met my husband that I'm still married to right before labor of my son, and actually that was something that saved a lot in me. It brought me some sanity, but also made it more complex because now I had a son and a husband, and I was certain that both of them would leave me, or I would leave them, or I could only mess it up. So instead of actually accepting the support, I started fighting it
Mm.
because I wanted to prove that I was, well, this was an unconscious fight, but still, I was trying to prove that I could do it all on my own still, but I wasn't on my own. So trying to prove that you can do everything on your own when you're not alone is really hard.
Yeah.
So then I started doing a lot of trainings and therapies around why people are the way they are, why I was the way I was, um, what I really should be learning here. And there was a lot of healing there. But basically, I would say that the most important thing that I learned is, for one, to accept support, which is a really hard thing for me because I thought support was having people do practical things for you. So I thought my cleaning lady was supporting me, which she is, of course, but emotional support, I wasn't used to that at all. My parents, by their own childhood default, were like, well, if there's nothing to cry about, stop crying. So, and I had to be responsible for my entire life from age 5 or 6 or something. So I would be called out for certain things that I would never call a 5, 6-year-old kid about. So I was confronted with the fact that I've really felt a huge lack of emotional support, also support in life, instead of people taking over, real support for what I wanted to do. And I really started working through all of that in a very messy way with a lot of ups and downs. But it led to the fact that I really started learning that I should start trusting myself, and trusting myself when I'm with other people. And I really learned to reconnect with life. It took me 15 years, but without that, I probably would have killed myself. But this is the whole thing. So, because suicide wasn't an option, I said, yeah, okay, so I can divorce now again and do it all alone again. But then it's just going to come back on my plate again. So let's just figure it out and fix it. And that's what I started doing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I'm just trying to imagine how hard that must have been to do that, because you get sort of hardwired into a certain way of being, and it's sort of almost it it's self-preservation. And I think from my own experience, I can completely empathize that it's very difficult when you become that self-reliant. It's very difficult to ask for help, especially if you think that person's going to say no, or they're going to try and control you. Because
Yes.
then it's, yeah, it's so actually you would rather just not ask, and you would just rather just do it yourself until you actually can't. And I'm just curious to know, at what point did the therapy really start to help you? I mean, what was a moment where suddenly you thought, okay, I can actually ask for help. It does not make me any weaker. It doesn't make me subservient to somebody else's control.
That wasn't really therapy's thing. That was really some other life thing where I realized that I was kind of pretending to be happy, because even my therapist, I didn't really trust. I, I kind of tried to go through all the motions, and do a good job so that the therapist would feel good about
Yeah.
our sessions. Does that?
I can so relate to that. Yeah,
Yes.
you're looking after people even when they're supposed to be looking after you.
Exactly. So I did not allow myself to break down or have a real problem because I thought, well, I am allowed to have a problem if I know how to solve it. So I would only bring the problems that I knew to solve to my sessions. And that's interesting because having a problem that I have no answer to kind of feels useless. It's like, yeah, but if I don't know how to solve it, let's just not have the problem. But that doesn't work. So then I built this life of, well, I have a great job. I have nice things that I do. I love my kids. I love my family. And at that time, I was flying to Singapore and to Helsinki and to all big cities, giving training seminars to really big corporates. And what I didn't realize is that I was totally afraid of running my business on my terms. So what I thought was, if somebody in Singapore asks me if I want to fly over, I have to say yes, or I won't get the job. What I didn't realize is that if they want me to do it, they could also fly over here. I couldn't even conceive of such a thought. I was like, yeah, but they want me, so I have to go. And I love it and I'm good at it. So I have to go there. And then at a certain point, I brought my daughter to school. And this was a very special day, where all the kids walk after their teacher into the school on their first day or the first week, something like that. And the entire school was sitting there inside singing to those kids, and they were walking inside the school. And then my daughter said, when I brought her, she said, Mommy, can you stay and wave with all the other parents and wave me goodbye? And I said, honey, I have to catch my train because I have to go to the airport. So I couldn't stay for the entire ceremony. And she started crying and she grabbed my leg and she said, you can't leave, you can't leave. And I had to get her off my leg, glue her to the teacher that she barely knew. And I had to turn around and walk away. And that was the first time in my life where I realized that I didn't have anything together. I was just kind of pretending that everything was great, but this was not what I wanted to do. I don't know if you should always be there for your kids, but I wanted to be there and I couldn't say yes to that. And that was where I realized that I had problems that I wasn't able to solve and that I really needed to start talking to people about the things that I couldn't solve. And I had absolutely no answers. And I just had to collapse and let go. And that is, so I went to Singapore that time. And when I flew back, this is still funny because I thought, you know what? I'm just going to say, cross everything off my list that I don't want to do again. And then when I started crossing off the list, only Tai Chi and meditation stayed on the list, and all the other things were crossed off. But I had made a commitment to myself saying, I'm going to do this. So I came home and I told my husband, I'm going to stop everything. And he said, but I don't know what that means. I said, I'm going to stop every single thing in my life that I don't want to do. And he said, but what about money? I said, I don't know. What about the house? I don't know. What about this? I said, I don't know. I don't have any answers. I will be on my meditation pillow. I have no answers here. And he started freaking out. And I just went and sat down and started looking for help of who I was. And I was really prepared to take all the consequences. I thought, if he's going to leave me, then that's what needs to be done. If the bank is going to sell the house, and that's what needs to be done. But I cannot go on like this. And it took about 5 or 6 months. And then things really started to change. And somehow the bank never sold the house. And somehow things really started to come together. And 18 months later, we were all out of this. But it was, well, no, not 18 months later. I would say about 2 years later, something like that. But it was really me trusting my own feelings, trusting that I really needed a different answer, that I had no clue where to find it. And basically, that the places I knew to look were not really helping me.
So it was a courage really to look inwards, and I think it's easier sometimes to identify the things that you don't want, but it's so much harder to really put down what it is you actually want, because through life you're conditioned to do things what other people want you to do, or things that you think you should be doing, right? So was that the whole process of meditation, going inwards, that enabled you to come up with those answers about what you really wanted in your life?
Yeah, well, at the first, I thought, so all the things that I think I should be doing, why am I even doing them? Because I need money, because I need to pay the mortgage. Okay, well, but why is this the right way, and why should I be doing it this way? So I started having a different conversation with myself. I started looking for different therapists also, by the way. And I really started looking at what belief systems inside me were causing these specific patterns. Because obviously, when you look back, and to outsiders, it might have been crystal clear from day one. I don't know. But to me, it really started dawning that I thought that if I made a mistake, I would lose everything. So I was trying to hold on to things so that my husband wouldn't leave me, so that the kids would stay in my custody, so that I could kind of face the world pretending I was a grown up. But I really had no clue about how you actually connect with people, how you actually really. So I had no clue about vulnerability, I knew what it was like to be vulnerable. When I figured something out, I could talk about it. But to really not know and collapse and say, hey, I don't know how this works, and have somebody tell you, I don't either, but we'll fix it. That was a whole new concept for me.
Yeah. And who helped you to do that?
And my trauma therapist.
Right.
Yeah.
So you found a therapist, you eventually found one who
Yes.
really helped you. Yeah, so tell us a bit about your business. So how did you reshape it, and what are you doing now that makes you feel like you're aligned with the things that you really want to do?
Yeah. So what I did when I flew back on that plane is also say, if I figure this out, I'm going to teach everyone. So basically, that's what I'm doing right now, right? And one of the things I discovered on that meditation pillow is um, that we block our own energy, and we block the things that we really want to be doing, and we block the things that we set out to do in life through all these patterns, all these childhood patterns, and through the whole idea of, I cannot do that before I have an X amount in my bank. I have to have money, because if I don't have money, if I don't pay my mortgage, if I'm not able to do this, that, or whatever it is, then it's not about what I set to do in this world. And I thought, that's stupid. What am I waiting for?
Mm.
Why am I making it dependent on anything outside of me? And it feels kind of like it's very wise to make it dependent on money, because if you don't pay your bills, then you'll mess up everything. But I thought, but my purpose in life is not to pay my bills. That's not why I'm here. So why am I not doing what I am supposed to be doing here? And I learned through all these courses and through all these things that I did around childhood psychology and around trauma, um, why we actually do that, how we block ourselves, what we do. And I thought, that's interesting. But then all trauma therapists just talk about your relationships with life and how you show up, right? And then everybody pretends that money is still something that externally comes into that whole system when you're grown up, which is absolutely not true, because what we do is we project all these childhood traumas on money. And then we start living as if that is the truth. Like, if I don't have money, I can't pay my bills. Well, that might sound very true, But then we negate that the way to make money is not by hoping that it will fall from the sky. The
Hmm.
way we make money is by actually connecting and relating to other people. So then all these trauma patterns from our childhood are actually in the way of us and money. And I realized that. And I realized my own mess ups there. And I realized why I was kind of chasing money or chasing success or chasing the place where I wouldn't fall apart anymore. And I really started discovering this whole system. And I thought, that is interesting. And I thought, okay, now if I want to build my business in a way that's good for me, then I really have to do it in my way. So I set up my own course. I set up my own way of doing it. I only work 24 hours a week. I work from home. If you don't like my kids, then you probably don't want to work with me because you'll see them a lot. And there's all this what I want to do and be and what I am here to teach. And I think that this is the really, so when I talk about my grandfather, he was my big inspiration. And he was a soldier. He was a colonel in our army. And he was always talking about that war was about creating peace. I realized that peace can only ever be created if we all show up the way we are. Because the only real reason that we're not having that level of peace is because we're resenting each other for, I don't even know what that sounds like in people's head, but it's kind of like, well, if you're doing something that I don't have the courage for, so now I'm going to chop your head off so that I will feel better, which is total nonsense, but it is what we do. So as long as people don't really take up the space that they were supposed to take up in this life, we'll not get one step closer. I don't believe that there is one big leader who is going to stand up and save humanity. Humanity will only be saved by all these entrepreneurs who think, well, I'm just me. Well, who would like to hear from me? I just do my little thing in this little corner, and, who really cares about me? But all those people need to start showing up to their full potential. Because if all thousands or millions of these people actually start doing that, then that will cause the system to collapse. So then I realized, okay, if that is what I'm here to help do, then my whole journey around money and around trauma and around how that ties into each other is the thing I should be doing.
Hmm.
It is what I am doing. So basically, I'm teaching entrepreneurs what is really blocking you from showing up, what beliefs are actually in between you and money, why money is not the thing that's going to save your business or create success for you, and how you can actually create that true freedom inside yourself so that your money flow will start, your business flow will start, and you will just show up the way you're supposed to show up.
I love that. And in terms of, your own sort of approach to life as a whole, business obviously is part of that. I think something you said to me earlier was, this just accepting that life is what it is and just,
Yeah,
going moment by moment. So almost capturing the essence of that philosophy you had in the old days when you thought suicide was always an option.
exactly.
So you didn't really think too far out. You were just in the moment. And it's kind of the Eckhart Tolle, power of now principle, right?
Yes.
So are you teaching people, entrepreneurs, business people, to almost embrace that power of now philosophy in the way they build their business?
Yes. And there's two things. So yeah, we need to set goals, but every business coach will tell you you have to let go of them as well.
Yeah.
But then how do you do that? Because the thing is, the only purpose of your goals is not to achieve them. The purpose of your goal is not to hit it. The purpose of your goal is to get you on your feet, setting one foot in front of the other. That's the only purpose that we'll ever have. Because life can throw everything apart again. it just did for most people, right? With COVID, and you have had a lot of things in your life. Life can be tricky.
Mm.
So then it's not about trying to hold on to things. It's about being here. But if you don't have a goal, you won't start moving, and then you'll just sit on the couch meditating. Now, that won't create anything in life either. So it's what I teach people is around what is it that your heart and your soul really wants? And then what in your past is blocking you from actually taking one step so that life can unfold itself. It's basically one big dance. And also in business, um, we we should just be showing up the way we are, and we should just be doing the thing that we should be doing. But then there's all these subconscious blocks that are somehow creating a place where we're not getting any money from it, where it's causing problems, where nobody is really getting what we're doing. And as long as we have the past trying to run our future, we're lost,
Yeah.
completely lost. And you're very right. It's exactly the philosophy of, okay, I only have to oversee 1 week. That's all I have to do. I think I'm the one business coach who teaches people to slow down. I'll take you out of the overwhelm. I will not put you through all this information that you need to consume. And if you haven't consumed it, no, I teach you to slow down, slow down, slow down, and really trust yourself and actually set one's foot in front of the other in a way that will bear fruit, because that's also important.
Oh gosh, I love that so much. And I think, that it's such music to my ears in a world where, people are talking about how I'm going to teach you how to do a six-figure, thing in a week or whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
this it creates this sense of, oh my God, if I don't do this, this, and this, I'm going to fail because all these other people are succeeding. So I think first of all, I love that you only do 24 hours a week. It sounds like
Yes.
the ideal kind of life. And you look absolutely beautiful and, radiant. And actually, the analogies that's coming to my mind and connecting with some of the things you said earlier, and given that you're a sailor, is that we all need to be a lighthouse. That each one of us has a potential to be a lighthouse on our own little island, and the purpose of the lighthouse is to always just show up,
Yeah.
show the light. And for some people, it'll be telling them, don't come here. If you're a ship,
Exactly.
don't come too close. For others, it'll be come ashore. This is where safety is. And the
Yes.
problem is if you're a lighthouse that's kind of moving around, not sure when to show your light, when to show up, then you're just going to confuse people and nobody's going to come to you, or the wrong people are going to come to you, and then you're going to clash,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
what I want to ask you is, as we're coming towards the end of this conversation, is the question I want to ask you is, what is your definition of a fulfilled life? Because we all have our own, maybe slightly unique perspective on it.
Yeah.
And how would you define your life as being fulfilled, and what's left for you still to do to achieve that if you haven't already reached?
Well, my definition of a fulfilled life is actually a life where I'm able to really experience everything in my life. So I would say a life where we don't try to keep things out, where we really embrace whatever it is that's thrown on our path. That's a fulfilled life for me. Um, Without judging. Because the thing is, a lot of people say, well, I'll be fulfilled once and then all the good things come up.
Yes.
But life doesn't let you choose, it just gives you a lot. And if you're not willing to experience all of it and let all of it in and embrace it without saying what's good and what's not, but just embrace it fully, then there is a lot of good in it. There's actually a lot of good in my childhood. There's a lot of good in the bad things if you're willing to look. So, a fulfilled life is being able, willing, and capable of actually really drinking everything in that life.
Yeah.
And there's a few things I would, so if I die tomorrow, I'm happy. But then there's a few things I would really want to embrace and experience if possible. And it's not up to me. My kids are now almost 14 and 15. And seeing that life grow is so beautiful. I want I want to see them have a family, and I want to see their path. And I want to see, I'm now in the period where I have to let go on a deeper level of my kids, right? And as a mom, you might know that that's kind of painful sometimes. I'm not finished with that. I really want to let them go fully. And if I would die tomorrow, that would be a letting go that wouldn't be good for either of us. So I would really like to stay around to let them go in a way that, now I'm crying, that that is beneficial for all of us. And I
Yes.
would really like to see my grandkids and see how life evolves. And it's more about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just on that point you made about, embrace everything, good or bad, and don't just, wait for the nice things to feel like this is my fulfilled life. How do people do that in practice? I mean, how someone who's maybe lost, a loved one due to COVID, or, or lost a job, or, just things that have just literally pulled the rug from under their feet and they're feeling really down. How did you find the perspective to kind of look at it and think, well, this is just life? How do you do that?
Well, I haven't met anybody who was able to do that on their own. So that's one thing. Look for a good therapist. But then what you should be doing, so what I did and what I teach our students and what we do in our programs is to um, heal your past from the perspective of, I don't believe that we need to heal everything in our past. That's impossible and we never will. And that's okay. It brought us to where we are today. So we don't have to redo our past. But what we do have to do is give that inner child that didn't experience things to be good enough actually what it needed to receive at that point. So I needed to become that parent for myself that my parents weren't for me back then. The beauty of it is if you really start to become capable of doing those things, then what you create is that I had years where I hated my parents. I deeply love them right now. It's all good. Everything they do is beautiful because I know how to heal my own inner child. It's not up to them anymore. So I allowed them to let go and I could let go of them. And I would say that if you're in a really dark place, what you need to do is embrace that dark part of you and really allow it to have all the emotions that it's having. And not from the perspective of the victim of, oh, I'm so sad, oh, I'm hopeless, everything is wrong, but from a healthy place where the emotions can actually physically leave your body. Now, that is not a process that's easy for anybody just to do, but that is what we need to be doing.
And just my final question, I think one of the things you said, was a recurring problem for you is that you found it really difficult to connect with people, to trust them, to kind of, accept their support. So did the work with that trauma therapist help you to do that, or has that been a work in progress?
It's a work in progress, but
Okay.
yeah, so my trauma therapist really taught me how to do that. I became a trauma therapist because I know how valuable that is. That's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. Um, so that and nature. So I could always go back to the ocean and lie on a deck of a ship and feel the exact same thing. I could lean my back against a tree, and that gives me instant that holding space. So what people do for you to heal these things is they hold a space for you where everything is okay, right? Like I said with my first husband, he was just there, no judgment. That's what nature does. It has no judgment. People often have their own scars and their own wounds. So, despite friends might really love you, they're just not able or capable of giving that holding space because, let's be honest, telling your friends that you want to kill themselves, that you want to kill yourself, is not something your friend is able to deal with unless he's a trauma therapist.
Yeah.
So, then what happens between friends is that you're kind of making them feel bad or guilty, or it gets messy really quickly. That's why these dark feelings are so lonely, because people have a hard time containing those for you. So nature and really good trauma therapists, that's what we really need.
Thank you so much, Suze.
You're
Thank
so
you for being so honest and vulnerable and sharing your story.
I'm so happy to share it. I just really hope that people find their way out of this.
And we're going to put in the show notes, how people can reach you if they think
Yes.
that you can help them too. Thank you so much.